सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen though.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The first petrol bomb was lobbed through the windows of the Sri Pragati Mandir in Birmingham's inner city Sparkbrook area. Fire burned through the carpet at the Krishna temple in Coventry, and the doors of the Veda temple run by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad were damaged in a blaze. The Sri Krishna temple in West Bromwich, among the largest in the UK, was gutted, and a Hindu priest in Derby had a narrow escape when his temple was firebombed. Earlier that week, in December 1993, the Babri Masjid had been demolished by Hindu car sevaks. Iqbal Sakrani, among the key figures in the anti-Salman Rushdie movement that exploded across England in 1988, alleged some Hindus in Bradford had distributed sweets. The wave of fire bombings across the Midlands and the north of England, the very first attacks on religious institutions in England since Luftwaffe bombs tore apart historic churches in 1942, was meant as revenge. The still simmering Hindu-Muslim violence in Leicester, which has pitted mainly young ethnic Gujarati Hindus against young ethnic Gujarati Muslims, judging by the details so far released by the police, should provoke some introspection. Why do homeland hatreds cast such a dark shadow among overseas diasporas? Toxic competition between Islamism and Hindutva has sharpened communal battle lines, sure, but the tensions aren't new. 30 years ago, Hindus and Muslims exchanged petrol bombs in Blackburn after a cricket match, exactly as they have done now in Leicester. Allahu Akbar, Jai Shri Ram, the aggressive displays of religious identity by young men in Leicester is in fact the product of the self-segregation of England's South Asian diaspora into ethnic religious ghettos. The ghettoization has ended up reproducing the dysfunctional Hindu-Muslim relationship in the homeland. 50 years ago, following what he claimed were instructions from God given to him in a dream, the dictator Idi Amin Dada ordered the mass expulsion of Uganda's mainly Gujarati Indian community. Within 3 months, some 50,000 people were forced to leave their homeland for the United Kingdom and Canada. Even the 8,000 or so Indians Amin's laws theoretically allowed to remain were threatened by being dispatched to dig shambas or vegetable gardens, or with mass deportation to the wastelands of the northern Karamoj region. Ever since the completion of the colonial Trans-Uganda Railway in 1902, the Gujaratis had come to occupy a critical position in the economy. They sold consumer goods deep inside the country and shipped out cotton and coffee to the ports for export. The Indians earned great wealth, historian Wali Jamal has written, but their fortunes also earned them the hatred of Ugandan Africans who had got a very raw deal under colonialism. Leicester already had a small East African Gujarati population which had grown through the 1960s and seemed like an attractive destination for the people leaving Uganda. But the Labour Party-led city council, conscious of the sentiments of its white working class constituency, proved less than welcoming. In your own interests and those of your family, an advertisement issued by the council bluntly said, "Do not come to Leicester." The Ugandans came anyway. Their arrival had been preceded by a deepening of racial fractures across the United Kingdom. Enoch Powell, a prominent conservative politician, prophesied in an inflammatory 1968 speech of the coming of race war. Edward Heath, who became Prime Minister in 1970, had to promise to control immigration. But the far right grew steadily through the decade, culminating eventually in pitched battles with the police in 1977. Even though Leicester now celebrates itself as the UK's most diverse city, The self-image is problematic. Educated, relatively affluent Hindu immigrants from East Africa soon began to move out of the Highfields neighborhood where they first came into white working class Belgrave. Belgrave Road, today the site of the so-called Golden Mile where the recent clashes took place, rapidly grew into a thriving business hub. Working class Highfields, though, remained mired in poverty, which became worse as industrial Leicester imploded in the 1980s. 3 decades ago, scholars Deborah Phillips and Valerie Kahn observed, and I quote, the spatial polarization of Hindus and Muslims in Leicester. Each urban ward had evolved clusters around markers of religious identity like temples and mosques. These new enclaves, research on Gujarati immigrants by the anthropologist Kenneth Halo has showed, sometimes mirrored homeland divisions right down to the level of village and caste. East African Hindu estate agents and solicitors grouped together to block other immigrants from buying into their new enclaves, Phillips and Kahn wrote. The discrimination wasn't one way. Muslims, they recorded, have been known to refuse council houses because of the proximity of Hindu tenants. The same segregation process, scholar Apurba Kundu has observed, was evident elsewhere in the UK too. Eastham and Waltham Forest in London are Pakistani Punjabi. Luton is Kashmiri Muslim. Southall is Punjabi Sikh. And Tower Hamlets is Bangladeshi. Each community had grouped together as protection against white racism, but also walled off its neighborhoods to other immigrant communities. Following 9/11, new conflicts emerged. Muslims registered consistently lower attainment in education and employment than other groups, official data showed. They blamed it on religious discrimination. Some Hindus and Sikhs complained that counter-terrorism programs provided disproportionate funding for Muslims. Leicester's complex demographics helped fuel this kind of communal competition. In 2001, some 15% of the population was Hindu and 11% Muslim. In the 2011 census, the percentage of Hindus remained similar and still does today, but the Muslim population share went up to 18.6%, driven by the arrival of Somali and Kurdish immigrants. Immigrants of Indian origin remained the largest single bloc, 28.3% of the population, and Gujarati the second most spoken language after English. Islam and Hinduism, though, became competing categories for state patronage. The competition, the work of scholar Sean McLaughlin shows, expressed itself in a surge in application for the construction of religious sites in Leicester. Funding from the Leicester City Council also ended up reinforcing particular constructions of homeland identity, for example, Garba events, over trans-community projects like youth football. For the children of the diaspora lacking a wider cultural context and the linguistic affiliations of their parents, religious identity slowly became the principal marker of their social being. Large-scale proselytizing activity by homeland fundamentalists also tore through the diaspora through the coming decade. The now internationally proscribed terrorist Masood Azhar Alvi visited the United Kingdom in 1993, lecturing at mosques on, I quote, jihad, its need, training and other related issues. Large numbers of young people from the United Kingdom travelled for training at jihad camps in Pakistan right up to the 7/7 terrorist bombings of London's transport system. The Hindu nationalist movement also grew dramatically in the United Kingdom through this period, political scientist Chetan Bhatt has recorded. Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh units, first founded overseas by the way by Jagdish Chandra Sharda in 1947 on a Kenya-bound ship, slowly grew across the United Kingdom. Long struggles to build Hindu temples, notably the Swaminarayan Mission in North London and the Bhaktivedanta Manor at Lechmouth Heath, which had been blocked by white majority neighbourhoods, helped mobilize a new generation of Hindu immigrants around their religion and faith. Few of the leaders of South Asian communities understood the dangers of these divisions in the 1980s. Faced with race tensions in the 1970s, the British government had turned to multiculturalism, outsourcing basically its engagement with issues of identity to political contractors who gained their status from their communal constituency, not advocacy of the wider community. Instead of the political and social equality they were seeking, ethnic and religious minorities ended up getting institutional patronage to maintain their differences and their ghettos. The violence we're seeing in Leicester now will obviously empower no one except white supremacists who've long argued against more immigration, saying that immigrants bring their homeland conflicts to England. For decades, Leicester's Gujarati immigrant families struggled to overcome their traumatic exodus from Uganda. Their children, blinded by hatreds that they barely understand, seem determined to walk into a trap they've laid for themselves. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint. Thank you for watching Security Pod.